on behalf of the American people, House Democrats, Senate Democrats joined together to drive down the high cost of living, to fix our broken healthcare system, and to deliver an America where working class folks, middle class folks, and everyday Americans cannot simply survive, but will be able to thrive economically. Let me congratulate Leader Steny Hoyer on his announcement. Leader Hoyer is a tremendous public servant, iconic, transformational, and legendary leader. And the House Democratic Caucus will miss him, but the House Democratic Caucus is thankful for his service, for his friendship, for his mentorship, and certainly all that Leader Hoyer has done over decades of service here in the People's House to make life better for the American people. Later on today, House Democrats, joined by some of our Republican colleagues in a bipartisan coalition, will advance legislation to extend the Affordable Care Act tax credits to prevent millions of everyday Americans from experiencing dramatically increased premiums, copays, and deductibles that would prevent them from being able to go see a doctor when they need one. The cost of living in America is far too high. And from the very beginning of this Congress, House Democrats have said that we will work with our colleagues on the other side of the aisle in order to find bipartisan common ground if our Republican colleagues are willing to focus on making life better for everyday Americans, which means addressing the affordability crisis in this country. The affordability crisis is not a hoax, it is very real. Despite what Donald Trump has had to say. Housing costs are too high, grocery costs are too high, utility bills are too high, child care costs are too high, and health care costs are out of control. House Democrats, joined by Leader Schumer and Senate Democrats, have maintained from the very beginning that we were in this affordability fight until we win this affordability fight. And today, we have an opportunity to take a meaningful step forward to lower the high cost of living for everyday Americans, particularly as it relates to health care. But it's a battle that we will continue to wage on behalf of the American people. It's now my honor to yield to the highly distinguished leader of the Senate Democrats, Chuck Schumer.
Thank you, Leader Jeffries, and thank you and House Democrats for their great work and what's happening on the floor today. I too want to just salute Steny Hoyer for an amazing, productive career. He will be missed. Democrats are going to make health care and other high costs, the high cost of living, the #1 issue for all of 2026. The average American family, there are millions of them discussing this right now. How are we going to pay the bills? Do I have to put aside my retirement to pay for my higher health care costs? What am I going to do with the higher bills that I'm facing? And everyday Americans are saying to their elected officials, do something about it. Unfortunately, our Republican friends have stood in the way of doing something about it, whether it's electric costs, healthcare costs, housing costs, tariffs, you name it. Yesterday, we Democrats in the Senate had a great forum to talk about housing costs. And then weeks ahead, we'll be talking about the cost of groceries and the cost of electricity, the cost of goods that tariffs have increased, the cost of childcare. And we will be relentless on focusing on this issue. Relentless. This is what the American people are demanding of us. And here the Republicans are in their bubble. The contrast of what's going on today in the House and the Senate is glaring. In the House, led by Leader Jeffries. Democrats are trying to extend the credits for 3 years to reduce health care costs. In the Senate, we Democrats are fighting to prevent military adventurism in Venezuela and other countries and endless wars. Donald Trump said last night in his interview with the New York Times, it could take years to solve the problem in Venezuela. That is not what Americans want. So Democrats in the House and Senate are focusing on lowering your costs, dealing with affordability. Republicans, led by Donald Trump, are focused on spending our treasure and, God forbid, lives in military adventurism overseas. Again, we are focused on lowering people's costs. We believe that's what the American people want us to do. And I hope today there will be more Republicans joining this leader. And if Republicans in the Senate should listen to the American people, stop this military adventurism by voting for the War Powers Act, which could stop future actions in Venezuela without congressional approval.
Thank you, Leader Schumer.
Thank you, Mr. Leaders. In terms of the ACA, do you believe that a bipartisan deal is in reach in the Senate? And for the millions of people who are enrolled in the ACA, should they have confidence that these credits will actually be extended?
Well, it's important to take a step forward today, a meaningful step, which is being done in a bipartisan way. Every single House Democrat, joined by a handful of our Republican colleagues, and we're thankful for the bipartisan partnership that is underway. We have to get that done. There's still 2 additional votes today before we can get the Affordable Care Act tax credit extension legislation over the finish line. So we're focused on that right now and have every confidence that Leader Schumer and Senate Democrats are going to do all that they need to do to work to get the legislation over the finish line. The Senate Democrats have been strong on this legislation, and they've been joined by a handful of Senate Republicans. Leader Thune needs to stop playing procedural games, because we know that a majority of senators are already on record supporting a straightforward extension of the Affordable Care Act tax credits.
Let me say, in answer to your question, American people should ask Leader Thune, are you willing to put this bill that the House now is moving forward on the floor of the Senate? Because it will pass. And that is the way to get this done. Right now, Leader Thune and Speaker Johnson have said they don't want to extend the ACA credits for a day, let alone a year. Most of the Republicans in the House and Senate want to put poison pill riders about abortion on it. They are standing in the way. They ought to get out of the way so we can help the American people. And that goes particularly to Leader Thune and Speaker Johnson.
Democrats are threatening to shut down the government right now. Some of your colleagues are threatening to shut down the government right now over the fatal shooting in Minneapolis. Given the fact that we saw the government shut down over these subsidies, I mean, is this a road that Democrats now want to walk down again?
The Appropriations Committee, and particularly the committees on Homeland Security, are taking up this issue, and they will have a very important and serious discussion.
So, given that you said that they're going to be taking up the appropriations process, if Democrats take back the House or Senate, will they do anything to slash funding for ICE or hold ICE accountable for these fatal shootings? There are multiple shootings, not just what happened to Renee Good.
Let me first say that the killing of Renee Nicole Good was an abomination, a disgrace. And blood is clearly on the hands of those individuals within the administration who've been pushing an extreme policy that has nothing to do with immigration enforcement connected to removing violent felons from this country. We support the removal of violent felons from this country who are here illegally. But that's not what this administration has been doing under the so-called leadership of Kristi Noem, who's a stone cold liar. There's no evidence at all that this was a justified shooting. So let's deal with the tragedy right now. She hasn't even been buried. Her family is grieving. She was a single mom and an American citizen. And we all are outraged by what took place in Minneapolis, and we will respond decisively.
Does that include- let me go back to healthcare.
Go ahead.
Let me go back to healthcare.
And I just want to, I watched the video. You felt like your stomach was being punched. Looking at the video, there seemed no justification for what these agents did. There needs to be a full investigation at the federal level, although I have little faith in the FBI at doing a fair investigation, or DHS, but at the local level as well.
Let me go
Yeah,
back
go
to
ahead.
healthcare.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay,
Yeah.
and I'd like to hear from both of you on this. So obviously, both of you have supported a 3-year extension of the Obamacare tax credit. That's in the bill that's probably going to pass today. If this goes over to the Senate and they come up with something that tapers that down or is an off-ramp or something short of that, is that something that you guys
Look,
support?
they are in a total pretzel knot. They don't support an extension a single day of the ACA tax credits, which is the #1 thing to reduce costs immediately. There's more to be done. But they don't even support that. The vast majority of them, even when Trump said he might look at some change in abortion, said, no, no, no. So they've got to get their act together, and they don't have it right now.
Leader Schumer is exactly right. The Republicans need to get their act together in terms of their leadership. These are people who are supporting military adventurism, billions of dollars being spent in South America and in other parts of the world. Yet Republican leaders in the House and the Senate are not willing to spend a dime to keep health care affordable for the American people. Donald Trump promised to lower costs on day one of his presidency. Costs aren't going down, they've gone up. And so it's an all hands on deck effort that Democrats are committed to make sure we lower the high cost of living. And our objective right now,
Let them come up with an idea and a plan. They don't have it.
our objective right now is to pass the bill in the House. And then we'll send it over to the Senate and we'll see what Republicans are willing to do to keep their word that they promised to lower the high cost of living in America.
Okay, last
Last
question. I
question.
got to go over and we have at 11 o'clock, we have the War Powers Act.
Speaking of that, what is your expectation regarding the vote? And if it does not get a simple majority, what is your expectation or plan for oversight of military action?
Well, first, we were 2 votes short last time, and there are Republicans. Republicans should step up to the plate. Many of them privately in their conversations know how disastrous this is. Made even worse last night when Trump admitted this will take years. He doesn't even know how long. This kind of military adventurism, this kind of spending treasure and possibly lives in an endless war. American people don't want that, and Republicans should be held accountable. We hope a few of them, the bottom line is we demand that they vote with us, and the American people are watching.
And what's
Thank you,
the
everyone.
plan going
Thank you.
forward?
They coming out full court press today, boy. What's going on? Man, that shooting changed a lot of people's mind. That's what I think. That's what I think that happened. That shooting changed a lot of people's mind, pissed people off because she never should have been put in that position where y'all ended her life.
President Trump and his entire administration stand fully behind the heroic men and women of ICE and will always uphold law and order in the United States of America. The deadly incident that took place in Minnesota yesterday occurred as a result of a larger, sinister left-wing movement that has spread across our country, where our brave men and women of federal law enforcement are under organized attack. Right now, Immigration and Customs Enforcement officers are facing a 1,200% increase in assaults, a 3,200% increase in vehicle rammings, and an 8,000% increase in death threats. ICE agents are.
I'm just wondering whether they're gonna allow it to go away. Y'all just gonna let it happen. They just gonna lie in everybody's face, and everybody just gonna sit there and take it. I'm just waiting for people to stand up and say we tired of listening to the lies from this administration.
Faithfully enforcing federal law to protect the safety of the American people by removing criminal illegal aliens from our country, which is exactly what nearly 80 million Americans elected President Trump and Vice President J.D. Vance to do. Radicals in the Democrat Party are furious over this. They don't want our border secured or criminal illegal aliens being removed. As a result, Democrats are impeding immigration enforcement operations daily, creating extreme.
You see that, you notice that they blaming the left. You trying to blame the left. We not talking about the left. We talking about you all lying, the administration lying about what happened yesterday. It ain't got nothing to do with left or right. This has to do with you all lying to the American people. Now, let's hope the American people start opening up their eyes to the lies they have been told. Hey, everybody, hello, welcome. Everybody that's been listening to this administration for the past year, this is a news alert. They've been lying about a lot of things. You need to open your mouth. You need to open your eyes. They've been lying about a lot of things. That's the point. They've been lying about a lot of things.
Extremely heightened and dangerous circumstances that make it nearly impossible for the men and women of law enforcement to simply do their jobs. Democrats are calling to defund federal law enforcement agencies who are protecting public safety. And Democrats are calling to abolish ICE and defund the police. That will never be allowed to happen under this president and vice president. The Trump administration will redouble our efforts to get the worst of the worst, criminal illegal alien killers, rapists, and pedophiles off of American streets.
Y'all see the goofy shit that be in the chat, right? On the screen. You see the goofy shit that be in the chat. This is the goofy shit. Maybe we need to throw water on you people who talk like this. You need to open your eyes. The administration has been lying about Venezuela. They've been lying about Nigeria. They've been lying about Israel and Gaza. They've been lying about this.
The Department of Homeland Security will continue to operate on the ground in Minnesota, not only to remove criminal illegal aliens, but also to continue conducting door-to-door investigations of the rampant fraud that has taken place in the state under the failed and corrupt leadership of Democrat Governor Tim Walz. Taxpayers have been ripped off to the tune of billions of dollars in this one state alone, and that is going to end, and people are going to be held accountable. The Trump administration has activated thousands of federal agents, doubled the number of U.S. attorneys in the DOJ office in Minneapolis, and surged resources to hold fraudsters accountable and demand justice for law-abiding American taxpayers and citizens across our country. And that's what brings the vice president out here with me today to discuss all the Trump administration is doing and to make an additional important announcement on this front. So please, Mr. Vice President, will be joining us now.
Thank you, Carolyn.
Thank you.
Great. Well, good afternoon, everybody. And I want to echo some of what Carolyn said about what we're doing to combat the rampant fraud that exists in our immigration system.
Yeah, but we're not talking about rampant fraud in immigration. You notice they're only speaking about how it makes you feel. You feel trying to get all of these immigrants out of here. You feel how we're trying to get all these others out of here instead of focusing on what is important. The fact that there are rogue agents out there pulling out guns on people who don't agree with them, pulling out people on guns, pulling guns out on people and killing people when they could be taking people to jail. Why would you even need to have a gun when you're alone, when you're ICE? Why would you need to pull out a gun on a person in a car.
Thanks to failed politicians and thanks to people who allowed the American taxpayer to be taken advantage of for far too long. I think it's important to understand why this matters to the American people. I am a father of 3 young kids, a lot of kids, a lot of people in my generation. What is that going on there? Is that normal? Okay. CNN installed this broken camera just to throw me off my game, but it's not going to work.
Some goofy reporter in the background say sabotage. Are you serious? Man, we done went too far in this.
So here's the simple fact here. If you're a young parent struggling to afford childcare in the United States of America, there are programs that we have to make it easier for your kids to get in daycare, for your kids to get in preschool. Those programs should go to American citizens, not be defrauded by Somali immigrants and others. Make it hard for you to get the access to the resources you need. But number 2, making it easier for people who shouldn't even be in this country to fleece the United States and our taxpayers to begin with. We have actually activated a major interagency task force to make it possible to get to the heart of this fraud. We have Department of Agriculture resources that are focused on SNAP fraud so that people who need food benefits can get them, but illegal aliens and other fraudsters don't. We have over 1,500 subpoenas that the Department of Justice has issued to get to the heart of the fraud ring. We've done almost 100 indictments, mostly Somali immigrants, but also a few others. And of course, we're looking in with broad investigatory authority to a number of the instances of wrongdoing that we've seen in Minneapolis. But we also want to expand this. We know that the fraud isn't just happening in Minneapolis, it's also happening in states like Ohio. It's happening in states like California. And so what we're doing in order to help coordinate this remarkable interagency effort from the Trump administration, but also to make sure that we prosecute the bad guys and do it as swiftly and efficiently as possible, is we are creating a new Assistant Attorney General position who will have nationwide jurisdiction over the issue of fraud. Now, of course, that person's efforts will start and focus primarily in Minnesota, but it is going to be a nationwide effort because, unfortunately, the American people have been defrauded in a very nationwide way. I want to thank a couple of people for their cooperation, in particular Pam Bondi, our Attorney General, first of all, for getting a lot of resources to Minneapolis to start to investigate and prosecute this fraud really at an industrial scale. We've never seen fraud like this in the history of our country. Pam has been doing a great job to get the resources there to uncover it. But importantly, creating a job like this often takes months, sometimes even longer. When we realized that we needed this Associate Attorney General position, Pam got this person up and running in about a week. We're going to make the nomination hopefully in the next few days. We'll obviously let you guys know who that is when we do it. I've talked to Senate Majority Leader John Thune, who has promised me swift confirmation for this official. But this is the person who is going to make sure that we stop defrauding the American people. Here's one final thing I'll say about this. I've heard a lot of people say that we need a special counsel to investigate fraud in the United States of America. I actually agree, and that's what this position does. It has all the benefits, all the resources, all the authority of a special counsel, but with 2 crucial differences. Number 1, it will be run out of the White House under the supervision of me and the President of the United States. And number 2, it's actually constitutionally legitimate. As you guys may know, the special counsel statute has some major constitutional questions. When we get the bad guys, we want to make sure we get them permanently and they don't have some legal technicality they can get out of, which is why we set it up as an Associate Attorney General. I'll take some questions, but I want to make just one final observation here. When I was actually walking out here, somebody sent me a photo of a CNN headline about what happened in Minneapolis. And this is the headline. I'm just going to read it. Outrage after ICE officer kills U.S. citizen in Minneapolis. Well, that's one way to put it. And that is the way that many people in the corporate media have put this attack over the last 24 hours. And I say attack very, very intentionally because this was an attack on federal law enforcement. This was an attack on law and order. This was an attack on the American people. The way that the media, by and large, has reported this story has been an absolute disgrace, and it puts our law enforcement officers at risk every single day. What that headline leaves out is the fact that that very ICE officer nearly had his life ended, dragged by a car 6 months ago, 33 stitches in his leg. So you think maybe he's a little bit sensitive about somebody ramming him with an auto.
Well, you would think that he wouldn't be in front of a car. Then that would have made him hesitate to get in front of another car. Maybe he's prone to jumping on hoods of cars. Maybe he's prone to being in accidents. Maybe he's incompetent and he doesn't know better. But see, it's all on her. See, it's all on the victim.
Automobile. What that headline leaves out is that that woman was there to interfere with a legitimate law enforcement operation in the United States of America. What that headline leaves out is that that woman is part of a broader left-wing network to attack, to dox.
What does this have to do with the lefties? I don't understand why you keep saying lefty. Nobody believes you all. Nobody believes you. Only goofy goofies believe you all. This has nothing to do with left or right. Nobody says anything about her being left or right. Nobody said anything about left or right. This is about a person losing their life. And he's talking about left wing, X, Y, and Z. No, this wasn't no plot. You goofies out there who keep talking about plots should be able to look through this and say, this wasn't even no plot. The lady was in a fucking car. Even if you could say she tried to run the man down. What the fuck does it have to do with left or right? Has nothing to do with left or right. That's the point. Nothing to do with left or right. Young lady, nobody knows anything about that young lady or her party affiliation or not. Has nothing to do with that.
To assault and to make it impossible for our ICE officers to do their job. If the media...
But see, you all have to think about the plot of what the hell you're talking about. What the hell they're doing. They're trying to paint the left as the radical ones. The left ain't got nothing to do with this. The right ain't really got nothing to do with it. Ain't got nothing to do with it. This has to do with the lawlessness of the ICE agents. That's it. The lawlessness of the ICE. She was following behind the police. They told her to turn around because there was a squabble or something in the street. And that's what she did. But now she was supposed to be hitting somebody or hurting somebody.
Wants to tell the truth, they ought to tell the truth that a group of left-wing radicals have been working tirelessly, sometimes using domestic terror techniques to try to make it impossible for the president of the United States to do what.
So what does that have to do with her? That's all I'm asking. What does that have to do with this lady who died? Why is it a press conference that turns into, it's a bigger thing that she tried to end a ICE agent's life? Nobody said that. And that's no proof that that happens. This is the narrative that they spin. But see, I don't believe the shit they say no way, because I know you guys lied. Once you lied once, I know you're going to lie again. And you definitely lying about that, because you're lying about what people saw.
What the American people elected him to do, which is enforce our immigration laws. The president stands with ICE. I stand with ICE. We stand with all of our law enforcement officers. And part of that is recognizing that you people in the media, not everybody in this room, but many people in this room have been lying about this attack. She was trying to ram this guy with her car. He shot back. He defended himself. He's already been seriously wounded in law enforcement operations before. And everybody who's been repeating the lie that this is some innocent woman who was out for a drive in Minneapolis when a law enforcement officer shot at her, you should be ashamed of yourselves. Every single one of you. Questions?
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. I wanted to read a quote from Tim Walz earlier today.
That's wild. That is wild. They're going to blame the girl. They're going to blame the girl for getting killed. They're going to blame the girl for him pulling a gun out. They're going to blame the girl for her getting shot in the face. Instead of getting shot at one of the tires getting shot or anything like that, they're going to blame the girl for getting herself killed. Even if she didn't hear a thing he said, even if she didn't want to listen to a thing that policeman said, that still doesn't justify her getting killed.
He said, when things looked bleak, it was Minnesota's first that held the line for the nation on July 3rd, 1863. And I think we may be in that moment now. Can you comment on his rhetoric and Mayor Jacob Frey and whether they want to see unrest in Minneapolis?
Well, that's very tough rhetoric from a guy who just quit because his fraudulent activities have been uncovered. Look, Tim Walz is a joke. His entire administration has been a joke. The idea that he's some sort of freedom fighter, he's not. He's a guy who has enabled fraud and maybe, in fact, has participated in fraud. That's what this new assistant attorney general position is going to find out. I don't care what Tim Walz says. I care about getting to the bottom of this fraud for the American people, and I care about enforcing the nation's immigration laws. That's what we're going to stay focused on.
A related question here. I mean, Democrats have accused ICE of murder. They've said they're targeting Americans. They've told ICE to get the F out of Minnesota. This is going to stoke the fire against ICE agents. And you're talking about ICE agents right now and being concerned about them. What, if anything, is the administration going to do to make sure these folks are protected during these protests? But also, should DHS sort of revisit their procedures here? I mean, nobody wants to see an American killed. Are there changes that need to be made to make sure something like this doesn't happen again?
Look, first of all, of course, nobody wants an American citizen to be killed. This is absolutely a tragedy. But it's a tragedy of the making of the far left. They have radicalized a very small segment of the population, taught them that ICE agents are engaging in wide-scale violation of people's rights. What our ICE officers are doing is deporting the millions of criminal aliens that were let in during the Biden administration. So number one, we have to say, as a matter of leadership, and I would appreciate if the Democrats would join me on this, let's be honest about the fact that we have way too many illegal aliens in this country. Our ICE officers should be supported in doing their job. You're trying to actually marshal the far left lunatic fringe to engage in doxing.
I'm curious. Why would you all think that? Why would they continuously say the far left lunatic fringe? What would be the point in you saying the far left lunatic fringe? If you say it long enough, you do have goofies who believe it. Even though most people on the left are not far right lunatic fringe people. Don't understand why you keep doing that. But, well, I understand why they keep doing it. It's people that ain't used to the way they talk, aren't used to it. So they believe it. Most left people are not far left lunatics. But that's wild that you keep saying this. You keep bringing it back to the left when the left have nothing to do with the young lady getting killed.
To try to make it impossible for them to enforce the law, and in some cases actually to engage in acts of domestic terrorism against our law enforcement officers. When you talk about different plans, different protocols, different policies, I forget exactly how you asked the question. Here's the simple fact. What we're going to do is make it easier for the American people's administration to enforce the American people's law. And that means that Democrats have to stop rallying the mob against legitimate law enforcement operations. And that means that we are going to get tougher. And that's what this AAG position is about. We're going to get tougher at the people who are defrauding the United States by inciting violence against our law enforcement officers. That's one of the things that we're going to do. We've already started that work at the Department of Justice.
Wait a minute, there's people that are attacking ICE agents? This is what I want to find out. Are there people attacking the ICE agents? Because I haven't heard of anybody attacking the ICE agents unless the ICE agents show up. I haven't found anybody, jumping on the ICE agents just to be doing that. I haven't heard that. Unless somebody heard, please drop a link or something in the chat and let me know where you have seen that people have jumped on ICE agents.
We're going to keep on doing it, and this new AAG position is going to kick that into high gear.
Vice President Vance, you just suggested that this woman who was killed, Renee Good, is part of a broader left-wing network. Who do you think is behind this broader left-wing network?
Well, it's one of the things we're going to have to figure out. But here,
that's the question. They're asking him questions. Nobody believes you all. Nobody believes you that this was a plot. This was just a person who got herself killed. Nobody believes. Well, there are some of y'all out there that believe this, but most of us don't believe this. I'm just wondering whether anybody going to stand up for the lady. Anybody going to stand up for the rule of law? Anybody going to stand up for the little white girl who got killed out in public in broad daylight?
Here's the way that I put it. When somebody throws a brick at an ICE agent or somebody tries to run over an ICE agent, who paid for the brick? And who told protesters to show up and engage in violent activity against our law enforcement officers? You see, just with this most recent terrible incident in Minneapolis, you see friends of this woman's or other people who are eyewitnesses saying basically that she was there to engage in obstruction of a legitimate law enforcement operation. How did she get there? How did she learn about this? There's an entire network, and frankly, some of the media are participating in it, that is trying to incite violence against our law.
That's so goofy, and it's a broad-faced lie. People might be acting individually, but there's no broad network hooking up, trying to mess with ICE agents. That's just dumb, and it don't make no sense. Because how are we supposed to have a network if people don't know when y'all gonna show up, where, and when, and how? They're just trying to paint a narrative, and Goofy's gonna fall for it.
Law enforcement officers. It's ridiculous. It's preposterous. And part of our investigatory work is getting to the bottom of it. Who's funding it? Who's supporting it? Who's cheerleading it? And of course, if there's illegal activity related to that, we're going to get to the bottom of that and prosecute it where we can.
Mr. Vice President, thank you for taking questions today. Is there a risk with you describing her as a deranged leftist, talking about very specific facts of these events, when an investigation is just beginning? Are you?
Yeah, she's asking you, how you out here telling us what she is, what she did, X, Y, and Z, telling us that she's a left-wing radical, and the investigation ain't even got warm yet. Y'all don't even know half of the things about this woman yet. Yet he's out here talking about she belonged to a left-wing network, X, Y, and Z. She had X, Y, and Z. See, you see the narrative. Y'all got to watch these people try to spin lies and narrative. We know they lie. We know these people lie for a living. So you cannot believe anything they have to say. You have to believe your own eyes. You can't believe the lies that they putting out there. You have to believe your own eyes.
You preempting a thorough investigation?
Ain't nobody got no big gigantic network like that, Black America. Ain't nobody got no giant. And even if they did, she wasn't a part of that big broad network that you're talking about. And even if she was a part of, that's what you don't get. You keep talking about the girl, Black America. You keep talking about the girl. It has nothing to do with the girl. It has to do with the fact that this man pulled a gun out on a young woman and shot her in the face. Regardless of whether you thought she was trying to run him over or not, there's a level of, wait a minute, hold on. I remember us having a fucking conversation, this nation having a conversation about that boy who stabbed that other little boy under that tent at a school. People were talking about there's a level to violence, there's a level to reaction. He shouldn't have reacted that way. He overreacted. He shouldn't have never did it. He didn't need no knife at no school, no blah, blah, blah. Same thing here. He didn't need no gun. He overreacted to what the fuck he did. And that little boy is in jail for the same fucking thing because he didn't have no business pulling no knife on no boy, just like this man overreacted by pulling a gun on this lady. It has nothing to do whether you deserved it or you didn't. It has to do with the fact that you overreacted. Your response was too far over the line for it to be plausible and not be accountable for what you did.
By drawing such conclusions, and have you received any information beyond the videos we've seen publicly about this individual, her specific acts that has informed your point of view?
Well, first of all, the Department of Justice is going to investigate this. The Department of Homeland Security is already investigating this. But the simple fact is, what you see is what you get in this case.
No, you don't try no girl in the case, in the damn case. You all are dismissing the level of violence that he produced for a simple act. Okay, he overreacted. That's the point. He overreacted. It'd have been another story if he reached into the car and tried to snatch her out of the car. That's a different story. But he didn't do that. He pulled a gun out and shot her in the face. If that ain't no overreaction, I don't know what is.
You have a woman who is trying to obstruct a legitimate law enforcement operation. Nobody debates that. You have a woman who aimed her car at a law enforcement officer and pressed on the accelerator.
We've already seen the wheels. We've already seen the wheels. This is why everybody is lying. That's why they're lying. We've already seen the wheels. Anybody who's seen the direction in which her car was turned, her wheels were turned away from that officer. This is where they're gonna start spinning shit. Y'all gotta listen. They're lying, trying to cover for this boy. They're lying for this man who overreacted to this woman's car. They're lying for this man.
Nobody debates that. I can believe that her death is a tragedy while also recognizing that it's a tragedy of her own making and a tragedy of the far left who has marshaled an entire movement, a lunatic fringe against our law enforcement officers. I think what is clearly happening here, and it's going to keep on happening unless the Democrats wake up and say, you know what? You don't have to agree with our immigration policies. You don't have to agree with what the president or the vice president believe about.
Pat, goofy, Pat, goofy. Nothing justifies him pulling a gun on a woman just because he told her to get out of the car. Nothing justifies that.
Immigration enforcement, but why don't you take this to the ballot box? Why don't you vote? Why don't you organize? Instead, what some of them are doing is encouraging people to get violent with our law enforcement officials. It's disgraceful and it's got to stop.
Just to follow up on that question, and again, thank you for taking questions, Mr. Vice President. There's clearly a lot of emotion in Minnesota, across the country over this incident. You're calling Renee Good a deranged leftist. There's been heated rhetoric that we've also heard from officials. What responsibility do you and the president have to diffuse some of the tension that we are seeing play out?
They don't feel no need to diffuse any kind of tension whatsoever going on in this country. If anything, they've been allowed to light the fuse. They've been allowed to light the fuse. This has not. Do y'all see this? They reach goofy, simple-minded people like this on the screen. They reach these kind of people. These kind of people believe the shit that JD Vance be saying. They believe it. Don't know how to make discernible decisions. They believe this shit. It doesn't matter whether she's left, right, or center. He overreacted to pulling to the right and trying to get away from him. They overreacted. He overreacted.
In Minnesota, bring down the temperature as this investigation is unfolding.
What we have a responsibility to do is to protect the people who are enforcing the law and protect the country writ large. Whether you're Democrat or Republican, you deserve to have the people's laws enforced in the United States of America. Now, again, I'm not happy that this woman lost her life. I'm not happy that this woman was there at a protest violating the law by interfering with a law enforcement action. I think.
Wait a minute. What do you mean she was at a protest? I don't understand. What is he talking about? She was at a protest. They had a protest and then she got into the car and was going somewhere? They had a protest? What protest? There was a protest going on before she got into the car and then she got into the car trying to get away? What the hell is going on? What protest?
I think that we can all recognize that the best way to turn down the temperature is to tell people to take their concerns about immigration policy to the ballot box. Stop assaulting and stop inciting violence against our law enforcement officers. That's the best way to take down the temperature. And we're not going to.
You see this simple shit. I told you it's maybe 2 out of 5 that believe these people. They don't know how to discern nothing. She got what she deserved. Nobody deserves to get shot in the face. Goofy Joel Smith, 971. Are you simple-minded? I don't understand. What the fuck are you talking about? Are you simple-minded? That's wild that they believe it. Some of y'all, boy, you need to stop eating crayons.
give in to terrorism on this. And that's exactly what's happening. People trying to antagonize, to commit acts of violence. They throw bricks at them. Sometimes they shoot at them. Sometimes they dox them. Sometimes they go to their place of residence and harass their families. This is classic terrorism. And we cannot say that when a far left fringe.
How is she being antagonistic if she was behind the police, Black America? How exactly was she being antagonistic? What does that have to do with him pulling a gun out and shooting her in the face, Black America? You keep bringing it back to what she did. We're not worried about what she did, because what she did does not rise to the level of murdering her. That's what we're trying to say to you. What she did was not, you do not rise to the level of getting killed because you are in a car antagonizing anybody. And your definitive, she tried to run him over, is in dispute. And even if she tried to run him over, which we know she wasn't trying to do, it still doesn't rise to the level of him pulling out a gun. So the white boy who got killed under the tent by that little black student, he deserved it, right? So Black America is saying the little white boy who got murked under the tent at that school running event deserved to get killed. Because whether you antagonistic very lightly or you real antagonistic to the point of hurting somebody, you deserve to get stabbed. This is what you're saying, Black America. Regardless of what level somebody takes you to, you deserve to get killed. That's what you're saying. You're saying the little boy deserved to get murked because he was somewhere where he shouldn't have been talking to that boy. He shouldn't have been doing that. Then you need to start deciphering. I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. Nothing justifies murder, Black America. That's the point.
Is inciting violence against our brave law enforcement officials that we're no longer going to enforce the law. That's rewarding the very people who are engaged in this garbage. The actual reward that they just got is a new assistant attorney general who is going to prosecute and investigate this stuff even more aggressively than before. Yeah.
Thanks for taking my question. So the head of Minnesota's investigations agency says that the U.S. Attorney's Office has essentially cut off the state investigations agency's access to the investigation. What is the precedent for that, and why shouldn't the Minnesota officials on the ground have access and evidence to work on this investigation?
First of all, I wish the state officials in Minnesota would investigate why you have so many people who are using their vehicles and other means to actually interfere with a legitimate law enforcement operation. The precedent here is very simple. You have a federal law enforcement official engaging in federal law enforcement action. That's a federal issue. That guy is protected by absolute immunity. He was doing his job. The idea that Tim Walz and a bunch of radicals in Minneapolis are going to go after and make this guy's life miserable because he was doing the job that he was asked to do is preposterous. The unprecedented thing is the idea that a local official can actually prosecute a federal official with absolute immunity. I've never seen anything like that. It would get tossed out by a judge. So what I'd like Minnesota to focus on is the real issue that they're encouraging people. Minneapolis officials are encouraging people to commit violence against ICE officials. It's ridiculous. It's got to stop. Go ahead.
Mr. President, thank you. You said earlier that there's a left-wing network to attack, to dox, to assault, and make it impossible for ICE officers to do their job. You told my colleague just now that there's an investigation going on into that network.
Yep.
So if everything that you say is true, how does being part of that network justify being shot?
Well, being part of the network doesn't justify being shot, but ramming an ICE officer with your car, that's what justifies being shot. It's not a good thing, by the way, but when you force somebody to engage in self-defense, it's almost a preposterous question. I'm not saying that funding some of this stuff justifies capital punishment. Nobody would suggest that. The reason this woman is dead is because she tried to ram somebody with her car and that guy acted in self-defense. That is why she lost her life. And that is the tragedy. Now, There may be other violations of the law and other penalties that are associated with those violations of the law. For example, if you are funding violence against our law enforcement officers, I'm not a prosecutor. My guess is that's not the sort of thing that earns capital punishment, but it should sure as hell earn you a few years in prison if you're funding the effort to try to assault our law enforcement officers. I'm sorry, guys, what's going on here? You guys are meant to report the truth. How have you let yourself become agents of propaganda of a radical fringe that's making it harder for us to enforce our laws? You just asked me a question that presumed that the reason why this woman died is because she was engaged in legitimate protest. She tried to run somebody over with her car, and the guy defended himself when that happened. Next question.
The investigation is still ongoing.
I said next question.
Mr. Vice President, I mean, you presumably watched the video yourself. There's not the slightest doubt in your mind, having viewed it, that the victim, you still believe that she deliberately tried to ram him despite seeing this video.
Look, I don't know what is in a person's heart or in a person's head. And obviously, we're not going to get the chance to ask this woman what was going on. What I am certain of is that she violated the law. What I'm certain of is that officer had every reason to think that he was under very serious threat for injury or in fact, his life. What I'm certain of is that she accelerated in a way where she ran into the guy. I don't know what was in her heart and what was in her head, but I know that she violated the law, and I know that officer was acting in self-defense. It raises an interesting point, though. Look, if people want to say that we should have a legitimate debate about, what was she really doing, right? Was she panicking when she drove into this officer, or was she actually trying to ram him? That's a reasonable conversation. What's not reasonable is for so many of you to plaster all over the media that this was an innocent woman and that the ICE agent committed murder, which is what many of you have said explicitly and some of you have said implicitly. That's what I have an objection to. The idea that this was not justified is absurd, and I think everybody knows it in their heart. Yeah.
Mr. Vice President,
In the green jacket.
Taking down the temperature, it seems like political violence is ratcheting up and riots could be around the corner. What steps does the administration have planned to try to unite America? Average people on both political sides are so tired of fighting with each other, and I think all the journalists in this room could agree with me that we don't want to be part of the problem. Do you have any words to unite America?
I know you don't want to be a part of the problem, and I think that's true of a lot of you. I'm not sure it's true for everybody, because the reporting over this has been one of the biggest scandals I've ever seen in media. I've never seen a case so.
Because he's lying. They're lying. That this is the reason why there's pushback is too big of there's a vast canyon between what people seen and what they're saying. That's why it's this much pushback, because there's a big difference between what they're saying and what is being seen. Okay. You have to know that there would be no pushback if we all would agree. We seen her run him over. We know that. But most of us did not see that. That's why it's pushback, because they're lying about it. There wouldn't be no pushback like this if it was clear, if it was cut and clear. It's clear that he shot her in the face. I don't care about any activity that happened before that. Why did you shoot her in the face when you overreacted? That's what you did. You overreacted. And those consequences, that hesitation, that scared response that you had should lead you to the jail. The same way it led that young black boy to the jail because he pulled out a knife on that little white boy under that tent. You should go to jail for the same reason.
So misrepresented and misreported when you have a guy who was defending himself and is now being treated as some sort of federal assassin by so many of the people in this room. First of all, let me say about crime. You mentioned violence. One of the things we're proudest about is that you saw violence.
You sound goofy as hell, Mark. You sound goofy as hell.
Violent crime over the last year dropped by 20%. Why is that dropped by 20%? Is it because we're attacking our law enforcement officers, or is it because we in the administration are empowering our law enforcement officers to enforce the law? I think that's one of the ways you take down the temperature, is you make people feel more secure and safe in their person and property. That's why we care so much about protecting our law enforcement, because it accrues to the benefit of the entire national community. I think that we can absolutely talk about the ways in which we can lower the temperature by discussing differences in a reasonable and rational way. Again, I'm happy to talk with any congressional Democrat or any of you about our immigration policy, about why I think it's necessary, about why I think it's in the best interest of the country, about why the President of the United States was elected to actually enforce the border for the first time in at least 4 years. So here's the problem. That's not the debate so many people are having. They are actively covering for people who are committing acts of violence against federal law enforcement. It is preposterous. The way to take down the temperature is to stop.
But that's not the way it happened in this case. You see, they're invoking, or they're trying to invoke your sympathy. Oh, we have these people gunning for these ICE agents. That's the ICE agent's job. The ICE agent's job is going to put his life at risk. That's the price he pays for being an agent. That lady didn't deserve to get shot in the face. That wasn't a part of the program that day. I know she didn't go there to say, oh, let me get shot in the face. If I try to run somebody over, or if somebody think I'm trying to run them over, they might shoot me in the face. This is bullshit. And you should be, and the person should be held accountable, and so should this administration for lying.
Stop it. Have your debates about.
Everybody want to hold the line. The only people that are lying about this is the administration, and the rest of us are like, this shit didn't happen. I don't care what you say. This shit didn't happen the way y'all keep saying it.
Policy. Attack me. Attack the President of the United States. Don't attack our law enforcement officers. They are trying to do the job the American people demanded that they do. That they are not policy actors. They are enforcing the law. They should be treated with a modicum of dignity and respect. And the fact that they're not is why incidents like yesterday happened. The one final point I'll make about this is, look, there's a part of me that feels very, very sad for this woman, not just because she lost her life, but because I think she is a victim of left-wing ideology. What young mother shows up and decides they're going to throw their car in front of...
This is another thing I don't like. We have two sides of the... We have two sides election. We have two parties in this country. The left wing is no more radical than the right wing. I don't know why y'all keep bringing that shit up like the left is more radical than the right. The left is not more radical than the right. We don't act any more radical. We haven't done any radical shit. None of that. I don't understand why people believe that the left is more radical than the right. They're both two different parties. That's it. And when one party continues to call the other party radical, I don't believe you, because I know that part. I know both of them are equally as bad, equally have their bad points. They have equally their good points. But you're putting one party and demonizing one party. See, this is what we're talking about, demonizing the other party. This only happens on the right. The right only tries to demonize the Democrats. The Democrats don't get on TV and do this. I ain't heard one Democrat get on there and say the right-wing radical, blah, blah, blah. We ain't heard that not one time, except towards our president. But then the president does it to everybody. But I'm saying, congressmen, you don't see Democratic congressmen doing this. And the vice president never got on TV and said this.
ICE officers who are enforcing legitimate law. You've got to be a little brainwashed to get to that point to where you're willing, not just to protest, that's fine, not peacefully protest, but throw your vehicle in front of legitimate law enforcement officers and drive your car into them. To get to that point, you have to be, I think, radicalized in a very, very sad way. I certainly wish that she hadn't got there. I know there's an ICE officer right now who very much wishes he was not put in the position where he had to fire a gun to defend his own life. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. What's your message, following up on that, what's your message to the leaders in Minnesota, the governor of Minnesota, the mayor of Minneapolis, to calm down the situation on the ground, on the streets? What's your message also to those protesters who saw that video in a completely different way than you saw that video?
Well, first of all, I think if you watch every angle of that video, there is one angle where if you squint, you can maybe tell yourself that it's not clear what happened. But when you look at all angles of that video, it is very clear that her vehicle went right for the guy. She actually collided with him. And then that's, of course, when he fired his shots. That's obvious, okay? So what I'd say to the protesters is, by all means, protest peacefully, but make this about ideas. Make this about disagreement with our policy. Don't use your protest as a justification.
The left's ideas are not more radical than the right. They're not more radical. They're more progressive than the right. They're not radical. Socialism is on both sides, Dwayne. You be gooey. How y'all be good? How y'all function around here? How y'all be driving cars and talking and on a job when your mind goes to this kind of stuff? You work with people who are left wing, who are on the left spectrum. They don't go around dancing and doing goofy shit, do they? They normal everyday people. So when you say goofy shit like this, I know you've been listening to this garbage that this person right here been spewing. Start thinking about what the hell you be saying. The left ain't no more radical than the right, but the left ain't out here talking about radical right wing, rabbit, blah, blah, blah. The only ones out here talking about left wing radical shit is the right. That's goofy. Just because we have trans people or gay people or people like that on our side don't mean we radical. Y'all just be goofy. I don't understand how you function.
Or an encouragement for people to go and incite violence and participate in violence against our law enforcement officials. To the people on the ground in Minneapolis, meaning the local officials in Minneapolis from Tim Walsh on down, I'd say, look, why can't you just disagree with a given piece of immigration policy without turning law enforcement into the enemy? And think about, for example, a criminal law where a police officer goes and arrests somebody because they violated a criminal law. If you're mad about that, go and protest the politician who passed that law. Don't attack the police officer who's just doing their job. We had a wide open border under Joe Biden. I happen to think it's a good thing the President of the United States has closed it down. If you think that's a bad idea, criticize this administration for a policy decision. Don't attack our people for enforcing the law, because
you can't talk without trying to incite using words that demonize the other side. You can't talk about anything that's not demonizing us. Every word that's out of his mouth is rabbit, left-wing Democrat, left-wing radical. Nobody on the left talks like that. Nobody on the left talks like that. That's to demonize the other side. That is what the right does. They demonize people. The left don't come out and do that. I ain't seen one left person do that unless they trying to be funny. Not in office. No, and definitely not no vice president.
You go to ICE, there are black people and white people, there are Democrats and Republicans, they are patriotic Americans who are trying to enforce the law. Attack me, lay off of our ICE agents. Yeah, in the blue, all the way, yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Vice President. You called on Tim Walsh to resign. Can you lay...
You still sound goofy, Dwayne. You still sound goofy. We're sitting here listening to your vice president spread incendiary lies about the left. We're sitting here listening to him talk about the left when it has nothing to do with the left. It has something to do with a dead girl. And you're still in the comment section talking about the left does it, the left does it, the left does it, like some idiotic lean. Listen to your vice president. He's the only one out here talking about the left does it, the left does it. And Caroline Levitt did it when she came out too. This is the goofy part we got to listen to. I told y'all there's some of these people, some of these people believe this shit. They believe it.
Lay out the case as to why he should step down.
Well, look, I think Tim Walsh should resign because it's very clear either that he knew about the fraud in Minneapolis, he knew about the welfare fraud, or at the very least, he looked the other way. I mean, this is not like Lex Luthor, right? This is not movie villain fraud. This is the lowest IQ possible fraud. This is, we're going to take the absence of kids and set up a daycare center where there are no children, and we're going to call our early child.
That's not radical, Goofy. That's not radical. That's not radical. Just because we have an open border doesn't mean it's not radical. Y'all need to grow up. You think it's not radical invading another country and snatching their leader? You think it's not radical having 4 bombings in 1 year by a rabid president? You think it's not normal? You think it's normal for a president to start calling a reporter Miss Piggy? You think it's not radical for a president to strong arm reporters or newspapers to pay him money? You think it's not radical to do all of those things? I don't understand why you see everything that the left may or may not do. You never see anything about what your right side does. You never do. That's wild to me. You never see what this president does. It wasn't radical when your president denigrated and shit on Rob Reiner when Rob Reiner was killed a couple weeks ago. You think it's not radical for him to have hate speech and those little posts that he has about every little person like Marjorie Taylor Greene? You think it wasn't radical the way he talked about her? Y'all never see the stuff that y'all side do. It's always something the left did. You never see the radical shit your side does. No president acts like that. Wake the fuck up.
Childhood Education Center, the Quality Learning Center. By the way, if you can't spell learning, maybe you shouldn't be in early childhood education. But people got rich off of this. We know that there were schools who either had no enrollment or at least they overstated their enrollment. Tim Walz, either it was unbelievable incompetence or he was in on the fraud. That's one of the things we're going to get to the bottom of. Sir.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Can you explain the difference between this Associate Attorney General and a special counsel? And do you envision this being a permanent position or having more of a limited scope?
Well, it's going to be permanent until we get to the bottom of what's going on. So I think it's going to last for at least the remainder of the administration. What's different about it from a special counsel is, if you remember, the Jack Smith case where the special counsel was found unconstitutional, one of the big issues there is that that person was not an appointed person, completely aside from all the other issues that the person was a lunatic and that the case had no merit. There was a fundamental constitutional issue, which is that he had not been appointed by the president and he had not been confirmed by the United States Senate. An assistant attorney general, what that's going to allow us to do is appoint this person, have them confirmed by the Senate. That's one difference. The more substantive difference is that this person is going to be part of a very broad interagency White House that's being led from the President of the United States on down. And that's going to give them the resources, the access to material and information to make this person more effective. I think a lot of people have asked, how are you really going to get to the heart of the fraud? We've been asking ourselves that question for the past couple of months, and we think this is the critical piece at the Department of Justice to really ramp this fraud investigation into high gear. In the red tie, yeah.
Vice President Vance, I wanted to ask, what's your message to far leftist agitators who feel emboldened to obstruct ICE activity in Minnesota and around the country?
Well, I think they shouldn't feel emboldened because now they have an assistant attorney general who is going to prosecute and investigate their fraud and their violence more aggressively than it has ever been investigated in the United States of America. We are doing so much to try to find the financing networks and the domestic terrorism networks that legitimate this violence, that fund this violence, and that, of course, engage in the violence. These people should not feel emboldened because they have, for the first time, maybe in American history, an administration that is not going to tolerate political violence of any kind from anywhere. Yeah.
We made clear today that the entire weight of the federal government is behind these ICE agents and this ICE agent in particular. There is still a federal investigation happening on the ground. Does that mean that they are not looking into this ICE agent at all? They are just focused on the woman who was in the car? What is the investigation if the federal government has already determined that its weight is behind this ICE investigation?
So what do you mean? When you say investigation, do you mean investigation of the shooting yesterday or of the fraud that's happening in Minneapolis?
Yesterday.
Okay, look, DHS, as I understand it, has an investigation already ongoing. I know that other organs of our government are looking at this. So yes, there's certainly an investigation that's happening right now. But as part of the broader fraud investigation, a lot of what we're doing with the Department of Justice has already started. We've got over 1,500 subpoenas. We've got people this morning, actually, we're going door to door to actually knock on some of these fraudulent care centers, these fraudulent social services organizations to get to the bottom of what's going on there. So the investigation in some ways has already been ramping up into the anti-fraud element for at least a few weeks. What we're trying to do is supercharge it and make sure there's a designated person within the Department of Justice who completely controls that particular focus. Yeah.
Just to follow up on that, Mr. Vice President, on the agent, is he still on duty or has he been placed on leave, on administrative leave? And what really was the target of the operation on Wednesday? Of the ICE operation on Wednesday?
Well, first of all, it was a legitimate law enforcement operation. We were going door to door to try to find criminal illegal aliens and deport them from the United States of America, because if you come to our country illegally in violation of our immigration laws, then we have the mandate, and in fact, we have the legal duty to enforce those immigration laws. Whether he's been placed on administrative leave, I don't know the answer to that question. I'd refer it to the Department of Homeland Security, and they can follow up. I will say, look, I would appreciate everybody saying a prayer for that agent. Look, in the past 6 months, he has been hit twice by a motor vehicle. One time, the first time, it led to over 30 stitches and very serious injuries to his legs. This is a guy who's actually done a very, very important job for the United States of America. He's been assaulted, he's been attacked, he's been injured because of it. He deserves a debt of gratitude. And I think the media prejudging and talking about this guy as if he's a murderer is one of the most disgraceful things I've ever seen from the American media. Yeah.
Vice President, what is your specific role in the future of Venezuela? And I'm wondering, could you confirm reports that the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, was kept out of the planning for the operations because of her past concerns about military involvement in Venezuela?
So I've heard a couple of things. One, that I was kept out of the planning for the Venezuela operation. That's false. And another, that Tulsi was kept out of the planning for Venezuela operations. That's completely false. Look, we're all part of the same team. And one of the things that is really amazing about that operation is that we kept it very tight to the senior cabinet level officials and related officials in our government. And we kept this operation secret for a very long time. I'm very proud of that. I think it suggests that the team works very well together. Well, looking ahead, what is my role? Look, my role is going to be whatever the president asks me to do. Well, every other day, I'm chairing the meeting that we do on this among White House principals to talk about next steps to try to ensure that Venezuela is stable. And as the president has directed us to do, to ensure that the new Venezuelan government actually listens to the United States and does what the United States needs it to do under our country's best interest. So I'm going to be as involved as the president wants me to be. So far, that's been very involved, and I'll keep on doing that so long as the president asks me to do it. In the purple.
Yes. Even
Mr.
beyond
the war powers
Sorry,
resolution.
we'll go purple, and then we'll go pink or whatever that is in front.
Royal purple, and then beige. All right.
Okay.
Are there any indications, you talked about the network, are there any indications that the lady who was shot, I know there are different reports from there, her wife said they were new to the area. Are there any indications she may have been a paid agitator, and maybe that there are others that were brought to the area, considering everything that's going on in Minneapolis?
I wouldn't say that she was paid. I don't have the evidence to say that one way or the other. What I do know is that she was violating the law. And if you just look at the eyewitness accounts, they were saying she was there to prevent the enforcement of the law. She was trying to obstruct a legitimate law enforcement operation. That much is obviously clear. The rest of it, of course, is part of the reason why we investigate this stuff. Yeah.
Mr. Vice President, even beyond the war powers resolution today, Congress has bucked President Trump on issues like tariffs. Are you concerned that President Trump is losing his grip on Republicans in the Congress, and what are you going to do about it?
No, I'm not concerned at all. First of all, we talked to some of the senators who were going to vote the wrong way, in my view, on this resolution today. Much of their argument was based more on a legal technicality than any disagreement in policy. If you look at the people who actually voted, every single one of them have supported the administration's plan. Second of all, as the president, I believe himself, has already said, every president, Democrat or Republican, believes the War Powers Act is fundamentally a fake and unconstitutional law. It's not going to change anything about how we conduct foreign policy over the next couple of weeks, the next couple of months. And that'll continue to be how we approach things. Go ahead.
Oh, so y'all plan to just break the law, huh? Y'all just plan to do what y'all want to do regardless of the law. This is basically what they saying. Y'all need to listen. Basically saying they gonna break the law regardless. They don't care what they pass. They don't care what the Congress tell them to do. That's wild. And ain't nobody outraged by it. I don't understand why they just letting them do whatever they want to do.
President. So we are seeing, regarding Iran, we are seeing the protests in Iran these days. The citizens are begging for help from the U.S. and Israel, naming streets in the city after President Trump. It seems there is an opportunity here that may not come again. Will the United States stand by the citizens of Iran? And if Israel decides to strike again the nuclear sites in Iran, is the U.S. expected to take part?
Well, look, we certainly stand by anybody who's engaged in peaceful protests, anybody who's trying to exert their rights for free association and to have their voices heard. Obviously, the Iranian regime has a lot of problems. And as the President of the United States has said, The smartest thing for them to have done, it was true 2 months ago, it's true today, is for them to actually have a real negotiation with the United States about what we need to see when it comes to their nuclear program. I'll let the president speak to what we're going to do in the future, but we certainly stand with anybody across the world, including the Iranian people who are advocating for their rights. I'll take just a couple more questions. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vice President. Concerning Venezuela, how would you assure the Caribbean region that they will remain a zone of peace? Because some member states in the region are concerned.
Well, look, the president had a very productive phone call with the president of Colombia yesterday, and we continue to talk at all levels of government with a number of our friends in the Caribbean region. I actually think this is really good for peace in the Caribbean, because when you take away a major source of illegal cartel revenue, which is the cocaine trade, the fentanyl trade, other sources of illicit revenue, you actually remove the power of one of the main destabilizing forces in Latin America and in the Caribbean. I really do think, look, we say it all the time, this is the president of peace. One of the ways that you establish peace in your own hemisphere is to make it clear that the United States is going to be respected, that the United States is willing to take power away from criminal cartel organizations and give it to legitimate governments. That's how we see the future of the Western Hemisphere, and we think it's going to be much more peaceful than it was certainly under Joe Biden. I'll take one more question. Go ahead.
Mr. Vice President, thank you. On Greenland, do you have a message for European leaders? Many in Europe reject the idea that the island could be for sale.
Well, first of all, Secretary Rubio, I believe, is meeting with the leaders of Denmark and Greenland next week. I want to say it is, but maybe it's the week after that. We'll continue to deliver some of these messages in private, some of them in public. But I guess my advice to European leaders and anybody else would be to take the president of the United States seriously. What has he said about Greenland? Set to the side the crazy overreactions that I've seen from the press and from certain people in Europe. What has the president said? Number one, Greenland is really important, not just to America's missile defense, but to the world's missile defense. Number two, we know that there are hostile adversaries that have shown a lot of interest in that particular territory, that particular slice of the world. So what we're asking our European friends to do is to take the security of that landmass more seriously, because if they're not, the United States is going to have to do something about it. What that is, I'll leave that to the president as we continue to engage in diplomacy with our European friends and everybody on this particular topic. And again, thank you all for listening. Thanks for taking questions. And I just ask you, look, this is politics, and often Republicans and get in arguments with the press about things. I understand that. I think it's really irresponsible for you guys to go out there and imply or tell the American people that a guy who defended himself from being rammed by an automobile is guilty of murder. Be a little bit more careful. We're going to talk about.
And you guys need to be a little bit more discerning about who you're lying to. You're lying to people who can see and who can think on their own. They don't need you to lie for them or to them, which is what they're doing. This is what they're trying to do, is they trying to gloss over a murder.
Toning down the temperature, which I know the president wants to do, and I certainly want to do. One of the ways we tone down the temperature is to have a media that tells the truth. I encourage you all to do that. God bless you.
They trying to glaze over. They trying to glaze over the murder of that young girl. And you got to see it. I mean, some people don't have that discerning thing. I do. I can see right through the lying, because the whole point was, we know she wasn't trying to kill the man. She wasn't trying to kill the man. Okay.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody.
But this is
everybody, and I want to start by saying that our good colleague Tim Kaine has been just a phenomenal leader on this issue and a great ally in the fight against another endless war. So I'm going to kick it off to him, and then I'll speak after Tim.
Thank you, Chuck. Well, thanks to everybody. I want to thank our leader, who has been very focused on this with me. I want to thank my colleague Adam Schiff, who's been a real leader both in the House and now Senate on this issue of war powers. Yep. And I also want to thank Senator Rand Paul, who could not be at this, but has just been rock solid on this issue for many, many years.
But y'all remember I said every day with this president is a different fucking issue. Every day. Nobody wants to deal with this every day. This was one of the reasons why we said we do not want to elect this president, because he don't know how to stay out of the news, and it's more drama filled years with this president, and nothing gets done. It's full of investigations, and it's full of fights, it's full of blaming who did what. This is not governing. This is not governing.
I've been trying to do this since September to get the Senate to take seriously the issue that we shouldn't send our sons and daughters into war without consultation, debate, and vote in Congress. And I have been very puzzled, and I know Chuck has too, and Adam has as well, with a desire to avoid this. The fact that we're 4+ months into this operation that began with a boat strike on September 2, and more than 200 so-called enemies have been killed. U.S. troops have been wounded. An armada has been amassed around the Venezuelan coast. We're seizing tankers. We used 150 airplanes in this air platforms in the operation Saturday, and now we're attempting to control not only the Venezuelan economy, but its politics, the timing of its elections, aspects of the Venezuelan society, as President Trump said for years. And there hadn't been a single public hearing in the Senate, in any of the committees, just drives me crazy. I came to the Senate obsessed about these war power issues because I'm a military dad and I represent a state that has deep, deep military equities, but we all should be obsessed about it. None of us should want this president or any president taking our sons and daughters to war without notice, consultation, debate, and vote in Congress. And so this was a big win today to have every Democrat unified for this principle that this needs to be taken out of the skiff and put before the American public so they can see what's at stake and whether the administration has a plan or not. I applaud my Democratic colleagues, and I really applaud the number of Republicans who, with some urging by Senator Paul and our discussions, got on board. What does this mean? This was a motion to discharge my war powers resolution from the committee. The committee was going to lock it up and it was never going to see the light of day. So now it becomes the pending business of the Senate. What you will likely see next week is a vote on a motion to proceed, which we would expect simple majority, similar vote to today, and then a debate, finally, after months, about this military operation, the whole thing, including where it's going in Venezuela and possibly in other nations. That's a debate that under the procedure of the Senate could allow for amendments. But this is all about letting the public in on what's going on. It is so frustrating. If I'm at church and I was on New Year's Eve and somebody comes up to me and says, my kid's an Army Ranger, don't let the president send him into war. Or I have people ask me, what's the legal rationale? Or what's the targeting criteria? What are we doing? Even when I know answers to these questions, thus far I've been unable to tell them because we only know what we know from classified hearings. It's time to get this out of the skiff, get it on the floor of the Senate, get it before the American public, and do what the Constitution demands of us. Again, I really applaud Senator Schumer for just rock solid focusing on getting this done. And we're going to have a fulsome debate on this issue of the kind that we haven't been allowed to have for a very long time. And with that, I'll hand it back to Senator Schumer.
Well, thank you, Tim. So today, the Senate really took a critical step to reasserting its constitutional authority and towards stopping President Trump.
Why is it that the supporting partner is out here doing this? Why isn't the party that's supposed to be in charge, this party that is supposed to be the majority, why isn't the majority out here saying this? Why isn't the majority out here saying we're going to reel back this president? Are you saying that the Republicans agree with doing what Donald Trump is doing, going into countries, invading countries, doing things that are illegal? They don't believe in him doing that stuff either. So why isn't that they're stopping him? Why is it the minority party out here in front? That has to tell you something. Why the minority party is out here, but not the majority party.
As he's lurching towards another endless, expensive war, all the while American families here are struggling with skyrocketing costs. Next week, this fight will continue in the Senate. The more the American people hear about what's going on in Venezuela, and the more they learn about it, the less they're going to like it, the more fiercely they will oppose it. This vote moves the resolution one step closer to final passage because Democrats forced Republicans to confront reality. The president is openly signaling a long-term military and financial commitment abroad,
right,
with no authorization, with no plan. Another endless war.
That's exactly where we are going to be if we allow this president to continue doing the things he's doing. Didn't J.D. Vance just say somebody is supposed to be meeting with Greenland next week? Are you supposed to be meeting with Greenland so you could take over Greenland? What the hell is going on?
Now, this wasn't just a procedural vote. It's a clear rejection of the idea that one person can unilaterally send American sons and daughters into harm's way without Congress, without debate. At the closed hearing, both Tim and I, my first question to the panel, including Rubio and Hegseth and all of them, is we need to have a full discussion in front of America, not just in a skiff, a classified room with only senators. The whole American people ought to hear about it, listen to it, debate it, and they won't like it. We know that. They already don't like it. And they demurred. They wouldn't do it. None of our committee chairs, despite Tim's requests, my requests, Adam's requests, would hold public hearings. And as a result, the Congress today voted on the War Powers Resolution, or actually discharging the War Powers Resolution, simply so we could have a debate on this, one of the most important issues that ever faced the American people, going to war. And we've always learned, we've learned through the years, that when we try regime change and nation building of this sort, the American families pay the price in treasure and all too often in blood. This vote shows that the American people don't want more military adventures. They don't want more nation building. The pressure is now on Senate Republicans to do the right thing and take a stand. Now, just today, as you probably saw, President Trump said in the New York Times that the U.S. involvement could last much longer than a year. A year longer, the reporter asked. I would say much longer, the president replied. We're going to be giving money to Venezuela, which they desperately need. So a long war fought with American dollars to give money to Venezuela and with American soldiers, in all likelihood, on the line. When the president said that, I think it sent shockwaves even through the Republican caucus. I think that's one of the reasons the number of votes have grown. And then when he doubled down, said we're going to be giving money to Venezuela, that's a stunning admission. Years of involvement, billions of dollars when families here are struggling to pay the bills, to pay their health care costs. Why isn't that money going to help the average American family have their health care premiums stay stable instead of going up $500 or $1,000 a month? Donald Trump, when he ran, promised no more endless wars. And yet he's sliding straight to another one in South America. Americans are not asking for an endless war that does not improve their ability to pay their bills. Families should not have to choose between filling their gas tank and putting food on the table, while the president casually floats billions for foreign rebuilding without transparency, without authorization, and only or even a semblance of a plan. We don't even know what the plan is. Can't go over what happened in the skiff, but it was appalling. It seemed like back of the envelope stuff. So what we did today was not a partisan act. I'm very grateful to the Republicans who joined us. It was not a partisan act, it was a constitutional one. We forced Republicans to face what is obvious. Trump will not stop here and won't stop now. But today's vote sends a clear signal. No president, no matter how reckless, no matter how egotistical, gets a blank check to wage large-scale military action abroad. Unlike Republicans, Democrats are focused on the real issues here at home: healthcare costs, childcare, housing, power. And those priorities, we believe, must come first. And the contrast between what's happening in the House, where led by Democrats and Leader Jeffries, they will, in all likelihood, send us a bill to extend for 3 years our tax credits, and what's happening here in the House, most Republicans resisting even a debate on this, the right, the ability to go to war. The contrast is glaring. So the president said it himself, as I said, a year longer, even longer. This will last for years. As Americans read the newspapers this morning and hear that it's going to last for years, what do they think of? What the hell is going on in his mind? So next week we continue the fight. We're going to force debate. We're going to force votes. And we're going to hold our Republican colleagues accountable. That's our job. For whether they stand with the Constitution and the American families or unchecked presidential power. I'll say it again. The more the American people hear about what's going on in Venezuela, the more they learn about it, the more fiercely they'll oppose it. And the more the American people hear about this, the more Senate Republicans will have to confront the reality that the last thing the American people want is another endless war. Go ahead, Adam.
Thank you, Leader Schumer, and thank you, Senator Kaine, for your extraordinary leadership on this issue. Like Senator Kaine, I've long been interested and involved in this issue in the House of Representatives.
Well, the whole point is it don't matter how they playing it. The president is wrong for taking unilateral decisions upon himself and then pulling us into wars. It don't matter how bad you think these people are. He's worse because he's doing more of an injustice to the American people. Nobody wanted wars. Nobody said nothing about no damn wars. Nobody. Okay. We ain't the same bird. We ain't the same. Not at all. You would not have had no American. You would not have had no Democrat going to war like this. Just unilaterally, and then threatening other countries. No Democrat would have did this. They're not the same thing. Not at all.
Trying to reform or repeal existing authorizations to use force that had long outlived their purpose. We have seen Congress's power to declare war, to refuse to authorize military action atrophy, and sadly, we have seen an atrophy in both Democratic and Republican administrations. So today's vote was very significant. We will now have a full debate on the Senate floor over the use of U.S. military force in what began as arguably an effort to interdict drug smuggling boats. That was the ostensible purpose of the military campaign. And either that wasn't the real purpose, or we had an extraordinary degree of mission creep, because this now appears to be far more about oil than it does about drugs. But in either case, the reality is Congress has not authorized military action to Venezuela. And the idea that we are now going to run this country of so many millions without having to put boots on the ground, that we are going to somehow oversee a transition over a period of time without putting our service members further at risk, seems highly improbable, to say the least. Even if we were to only put a diplomatic presence on the ground, that presence must be protected. And we can see the number of troops growing even without that initially being the intention. Now, if the administration believes, as it evidently does, that risking service members to procure oil of another country is worth the risk, then let them put that to a vote. Let them come to Congress. Let them seek an authorization to use military force in that way. But given the administration has committed not to engage in regime change and not to engage in new wars, but rather to put America first, what is happening seems directly contradictory to what the president promised. So I'm looking forward to the full debate that we have next week. I hope it is really the beginning of the debate, as Senator Kaine was saying. It's time to move this out of the skiff and into the public light. Let them come and make the case for the use of military force this way. We have seen all too often in our history great hopes, great expectations about what we could do, what we could accomplish through the use of military force or economic coercion to change a regime and change the character of that regime and build a society, a democratic society. And ultimately, it is our service members who have paid such a dear cost when those hopes and expectations ran into the reality on the ground. So very grateful to Senator Kaine for his leadership on this issue. Been proud to work with him on it, and very much looking forward to a full and comprehensive debate. I think as the president's pledges that we will stay there for years continue, Republican concern will continue to grow. And all of us understand that the votes we're casting now, we will be held to answer for, depending on future events. And so, again, my thanks, Senator Kaine and Leader, for your work on this important issue.
Great. Questions?
Leadership?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Leader. Senator Thone has said that this debate next week could eat into the time that you all would be proceeding with the minibus that the House is going to pass today. Are you concerned that
Look,
you mentioned that there may need to be a seat?
there's a required 10 hours to debate, but we will work with Senator Kaine so we can do both. We'd like to move the mini CR. We'll see what happens in the House. I believe it is today. I believe it is this week.
So you're confident that
I think we want to try to do both. Absolutely.
Leadership.
Yes.
How much do you think some of this saber rattling over the past couple of days from the president and the administration on Colombia, on Mexico, on Greenland, on Cuba contributed to the vote today?
Look, people don't want endless war. And when even before we know what they're doing in Venezuela and whether what they want to do in Venezuela, they can even accomplish, and we don't even know how they're going to accomplish. They start talking about Colombia. They start talking about Mexico. They start talking about Greenland. The American people are saying, what the hell is going on here? And what's gotten into the president's head? Yes.
Senator Schumer, President issued a
Feel
veto
free to
threat.
chime in. Feel free to chime in.
Yeah. So the president issued a veto threat on this resolution. You don't have 67. Do you see
One day.
But do you see the appropriations bills that are coming up that are needed to keep the government open past January 30th as an opportunity to put in a spending limitation?
Look, we don't even know what the president, what the administration, the Trump administration doesn't even have a plan. So we didn't even know what they're asking for. Yes.
Trump and several of your Republican colleagues maintained that the operation over the weekend was only for a law enforcement operation. Does this war powers resolution go far enough to prevent all unauthorized military force, or would a law enforcement operation be illegal for the Trump administration?
Mr. Kaine.
Yeah. If this had just been an arrest of Maduro to bring him back to the Southern District of New York to face charges on a valid indictment, I wouldn't have called this up for a vote. And I think there's a question under the War Powers Resolution whether an arrest operation, even if it had a military escort, was hostilities that would allow this kind of a privileged vote to get a guaranteed vote in the floor. That's not what this is. Started in September, strikes against Venezuelan boats in open waters, and then the amassing of the Armada, and then the seizure of ships, and then the coordinated attack, 150 aircraft, and not just to extract the president, also to bomb military sites around Venezuela, the deposing of the government, the seizing of oil, the setting of conditions for future elections, and the promise that we're going to be there for years with the U.S. military enforcing a blockade in and out of Venezuela so they can't get anything in or out without our permission.
So that means we're going to be there for years. They dirty as hell, and they dragged us into it. That's the messed up part. Nobody wants to be in a war. Now we in a war. Now we there. And we got the dirtiest president who put us there. This is where we at, in the middle of a war.
This is not an arrest. If it was just an arrest, we wouldn't have been having this debate. It's much bigger than that. And that's why it needs to be put before the American public.
Nor did they even claim that it's just an arrest. President kept talking he said it in 4 words. The United States will run Venezuela. That's not just an arrest. Yeah, Tim, go ahead.
2 points. First of all, if any other country did this, the United States, that is, blockaded our shores, sent in a military force to apprehend a fugitive, we would view that as far from a law enforcement operation. We would view that, frankly, as an act of war. What's more, the legal rationale that this military force was merely used to accompany law enforcement for the purpose of apprehending a fugitive, Nicolas Maduro. If that were the case, that would have been the end of our involvement with Venezuela. He has been apprehended. He's been brought to court. That would be the end of it. There is no law enforcement necessity in terms of the prosecution of Maduro, that we blockade the country, that we seize oil resources, that we try to change the nature of the government. So if that was a legal rationale rather than a superficial pretext, it would be over. It is clearly not over.
Yes. Yes.
The House, as you know, is voting today on the veto override as well as the ACA bill. Do you see this as a, if those votes are successful, do you see this in conjunction with the War Powers vote as a broader sort of rebuke of President Trump?
Look,
you sound goofy as hell, Robert DuPont. You sound goofy as hell. You don't have no reason or no basis to say what you say. Not one reason or no basis. But you ain't got no pushback for this president who got us into the war. You sound goofy as hell. Left lunatics. They should be in jail. Why specifically should this man right here, Tim Kaine, be in jail? You don't even have a reason for him to be in jail. You don't even have a reason. That's the thing. Just talking for no reason. I told y'all some of these people eat crayons. Some of these people believe this stuff that they be spouting. Ain't never had no problem with no lefty. Work with lefties, live with lefties, talk to lefties every day. And lefties are lunatics. That's wild. That's wild. And they believe everything this president says, every lie.
Look, again, to quote the great Abe Lincoln, public safety.
You can't tell you name one thing what Tim did that was crooked. Name one thing that Tim Kaine did that was crooked, Vicky Perry. One thing that was crooked. Not out of your imagination, not out of your fevered, goofy-filled imagination. Let's put facts on the table. Name one thing that Tim Kaine has done that has been crooked as hell. Just can't name nothing, just talking.
Sentiment is everything. Public sentiment, in terms of how Trump is behaving as president, what he's doing as president, keeps sinking and sinking and sinking. And our Republican colleagues realize that. So I think on this issue and other issues, you're going to find our Republican colleagues saying, maybe following Trump is like Thelma and Louise, right over the cliff. Yes.
Obviously, this might be for you or for Senator Kaine, but next week, part of this process is that there's an open amendment process. Do you anticipate this resolution being amended, any of those amendments passing? And what have some of your colleagues said?
Only people like you think that, not king shit. Only people like you. You sure you don't take medication? Because the rest of us can see him. Maybe you can't see him.
I don't think my colleagues on the other side thought it was going to pass. So I'm not sure that they've really thought that through. The last time we did this, after the Soleimani strike, we did pass a resolution.
No, Vicky. You said he should be in jail. And I said, explain why he should be in jail. You said Tim Kaine should be in jail. That's my point. My point is, do you just be talking or do you have evidence that he should be in jail? Because if you ain't got evidence that he should be in jail, you shouldn't even be saying nothing like that. That don't even make sense. Do you know how that sounds?
Look, Soleimani being gone is a good thing for the planet, but no war against Iran without a vote of Congress. And we did have about 7 or 8 amendments that we took up on the floor when the resolution.
I'm sorry, you said he was crooked as hell. And I asked you to produce evidence, and you still haven't done that.
Resolution was debated. We were able to deal with them all and dispatch them in the course of about 2 hours. If you're committed to a process, it doesn't have to drag out forever. We did 7 or 8 amendments, we voted on them, and then we moved that bill eventually to the president's desk. So it's early to say what might be out there, but I'm kind of inclined to agree with Senator Schumer. We know a lot that we can't describe. Once folks start to get deeper and deeper into this, I think they're not going to like it, and I would suspect that my colleagues may want to go light on the amendment process.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.
Hold on, I'm getting it. Hold on. What the hell am I getting right here? Wait a minute, hold on. Nope, right here. There we go. Because this is wild too, right here.
With Adobe Acrobat AI Assistant, I can summarize key contract details in seconds so that I can confidently explain it to both a buyer and a seller. AI Assistant helps me focus on what really matters, helping people find a place that they can call home.
I hate that. I hate that. I'm sorry.
Is thankful
for
his service, for his friendship.
Because, well, y'all,
the working class folks, middle class.
This is the
early down the high cost of living, to fix our broken healthcare system, and to deliver in America where working class folks, middle class folks, and everyday Americans cannot simply survive, but will be able to thrive economically. Let me congratulate Leader Steny Hoyer on his announcement. Leader Hoyer is a tremendous public servant, iconic, transformational, and legendary leader. And the House Democratic Caucus will miss him, but the House Democratic Caucus is thankful for his service, for his friendship, for his mentorship, and certainly all that Leader Hoyer has done over decades of service here in the People's House to make life better for the American people. Later on today, House Democrats, joined by some of our Republican colleagues in a bipartisan coalition, will advance legislation to extend the Affordable Care Act tax credits to prevent millions of everyday Americans from experiencing dramatically increased premiums, copays, and deductibles that would prevent them from being able to go see a doctor when they need one. The cost of living in America is far too high. And from the very beginning of this Congress, House Democrats have said that we will work with our colleagues on the other side of the aisle in order to find bipartisan common ground if our Republican colleagues are willing to focus on making life better for everyday Americans, which means addressing the affordability crisis in this country. The affordability crisis is not a hoax, it is very real. Despite what Donald Trump has had to say. Housing costs are too high, grocery costs are too high, utility bills are too high, childcare costs are too high, and healthcare costs are out of control. House Democrats, joined by Leader Schumer and Senate Democrats, have maintained from the very beginning that we were in this affordability fight until we win this affordability fight. And today, we have an opportunity to take a meaningful step forward to lower the high cost of living for everyday Americans, particularly as it relates to healthcare. But it's a battle that we will continue to wage on behalf of the American people. It's now my honor to yield to the highly distinguished leader of the Senate Democrats, Chuck Schumer.
Thank you, Leader Jeffries, and thank you and House Democrats for their great work and what's happening on the floor today. I too want to just salute Steny Hoyer for an amazing, productive career. He will be missed. Democrats are going to make health care and other high costs, the high cost of living, the #1 issue for all of 2026. The average American family, there are millions of them discussing this right now. How are we going to pay the bills? Do I have to put aside my retirement to pay for my higher healthcare costs? What am I going to do with the higher bills that I'm facing? And every day, Americans are saying to their elected officials, do something about it. Unfortunately, our Republican friends have stood in the way of doing something about it, whether it's electric costs, healthcare costs, housing costs, tariffs, you name it. Yesterday, we Democrats in the Senate had a great forum to talk about housing costs. And then weeks ahead, we'll be talking about the cost of groceries and the cost of electricity, the cost of goods that tariffs have increased, the cost of childcare. And we will be relentless on focusing on this issue. Relentless. This is what the American people are demanding of us. And here the Republicans are in their bubble. The contrast of what's going on today in the House and the Senate is glaring. In the House, led by Leader Jeffries, Democrats are trying to extend the credits for 3 years to reduce health care costs. In the Senate, we Democrats are fighting to prevent military adventurism in Venezuela and other countries and endless wars. Donald Trump said last night in his interview with the New York Times, it could take years to solve the problem in Venezuela. That is not what Americans want. So Democrats in the House and Senate are focusing on lowering your costs, dealing with affordability. Republicans, led by Donald Trump, are focused on spending our treasure and, God forbid, lives in military adventurism overseas. Again, we are focused on lowering people's costs. We believe that's what the American people want us to do.
Yeah.
And I hope today there will be more Republicans joining this leader. And if Republicans in the Senate should listen to the American people, stop this military adventurism by voting for the War Powers Act, which could stop future actions in Venezuela without congressional approval.
Thank you, Mr. Leader. In terms of the ACA, do you believe that a bipartisan deal is in reach in the Senate? And for the millions of people who are enrolled in the ACA, should they have confidence that these?
Well, that's the thing. They still got a series of bills, a series of votes that they got to take. They got to take a series of votes. But the whole point of the day has been overshadowed by this shooting of this girl. So they should take advantage of this. You need to fight. You need to vote for this because of X, Y, and Z. They need to take advantage of this right now and get these things passed.
Credits will actually be extended.
Well, it's important to take a step forward today, a meaningful step, which is being done in a bipartisan way. Every single House Democrat, joined by a handful of our Republican colleagues, and we're thankful for the bipartisan partnership that is underway. We have to get that done. There's still 2 additional votes today before we can get the Affordable Care Act tax credit extension legislation over the finish line. So we're focused on that right now and have every confidence that Leader Schumer and Senate Democrats are going to do all that they need to do to work to get the legislation over the finish line. The Senate Democrats have been strong on this legislation, and they've been joined by a handful of Senate Republicans. Leader Thune needs to stop playing procedural games because we know that a majority of senators are already on record supporting a straightforward extension of the Affordable Care Act tax credits.
Yeah, let me say, in answer to your question, American people should ask Leader Thune, are you willing to put this bill that the House now is moving forward on the floor of the Senate? Because it will pass. And that is the way to get this done. Right now, Leader Thune and Speaker Johnson have said they don't want to extend the ACA credits for a day, let alone a year. Most of the Republicans in the House and Senate want to put poison pill riders about abortion on it. They are standing in the way. They ought to get out of the way so we can help the American people. And that goes particularly to Leader Thune and Speaker Johnson.
That's right. So that's why I say all the time, the Republicans need to be out of power because they don't want to govern. What they want to do is stand in the way of any kind of progress to the United States. No, they don't want to help the middle class. I'm sorry. They don't want to help the middle class. That's right. They don't want to help the middle class.
Establishing a universal healthcare commission, livelihood, where no one lies awake at night wondering if they'll be able to afford insulin, whether they'll be able to afford it if their kid breaks their arm, whether they'll be able to afford it if their spouse has a pregnancy complication or a cancer diagnosis. It's not radical. It's not unrealistic. It's humanity. And the United States, arguably the wealthiest country in the world, doesn't have a universal healthcare system like every advanced nation in the world does. It's time for our nation's leaders to stop making excuses. It's time for us to find real solutions that put the American people first. I yield back to Representative Rivas.
Thank you, Congresswoman.
That's why I want single payer health care. I'm fighting for single payer health care. What is everybody else fighting for? Is anybody fighting for anything? Leave me a comment about what we can fight for, because these people are spending our money and not giving us nothing. We need to fight for universal health care. We need to fight for single payer health care. We need to fight for something. Okay. You're already paying for somebody else's insurance. Now we want it to be better. We want the insurance to be better. We deserve to have it better. Instead of paying these insurance companies for our insurance, we need to be fighting for the universal health care or single payer health care. They need to be giving us something. They give away all this money to the rich people. You can give money to the poor people. And the poor people need universal health care.
Yield 3 minutes to my colleague from the great state of New York, Congressman Paul Tonko.
Thank you. I appreciate the gentlewoman yielding. And let me thank both Congressmember Luz Rivas of California and Emily Randall of Washington State for hosting us with this special order hour. I know, as they being two freshman congresswomen, and I know at least one other freshman congresswoman that will be joining in the discussion, just reflect the tremendous amount of talent and passion to make a difference in this freshman class. And we are so blessed to have them in the caucus. And it's so important to witness the efforts that the two congresswomen hosting us.
See, the point is, you need to fucking get somebody to do something. We know the Republicans ain't gonna do nothing because they're dragging their feet on this right here. So you know the Republicans ain't gonna do nothing. The only people talking about doing something is the Democrats. So we got to go with the Democrats if we want to get some kind of health care for this nation, some kind of help for this nation, something done for the poor people or the middle class people in this nation, because the Republicans are not going to do it. Republicans only want to have power. They don't want to play. They don't want to give us anything, any poor people, anything. Okay. The president didn't do jack shit for us middle class people. Sam Bishop, y'all just be talking. There ain't one thing you can say that this president did for middle class. Not one thing you can say that the president did for middle class. No, get your ass up off the Democrats and tell me what this president did for middle class. No, I don't need to look it up. You're the one claiming it. If you're the one claiming it, back it up. Otherwise, shut the fuck up. You ain't backing up shit. You just talking. He ain't signed no deals for no middle class. I said middle class. Middle class, goofy.
Have made in regard to accessibility and affordability. It's most appreciated. After months of pushing, Democrats succeeded in forcing a vote to extend ACA subsidies that offer life-saving healthcare benefits to millions of families. That extension just passed the House just hours ago, but the fight isn't over to secure these benefits and meaningfully lower costs for Americans. The Senate must act at once to restore these benefits and ease the burden of rising costs for people like Micaiah, one of my constituents from New York's 20th Congressional District. Micaiah was born and raised in Schenectady, New York. She recently turned 26 and was bumped off of her parents' health insurance plan. She made the smart and responsible choice to switch to an ACA plan. But because Republicans let vital ACA subsidies lapse last year, she no longer knows how she'll afford coverage. This at a time when she and her wife are thinking about starting a family together. So often I hear the reaction from those on the right saying, just get a job. Well, Micaiah already works at a job. In fact, 2 jobs, one for her local school district and one as a manager of McDonald's. All told, between both jobs, she works some 16 hours a day. But neither position offers affordable or comprehensive enough health care, so an ACA plan is her only real option. In this, the richest country in the world, the richest country in the history of the world, this is simply unacceptable. No one should be spending nearly all of their waking hours working multiple jobs and still unable to afford basic health care coverage for themselves and their family members. Yet, this is the painful reality for millions of Americans. Faced with this impossible scenario, Micaiah said that she may try to work even more hours to make ends meet, but there are simply not enough hours in the day to work much more than she already does. We have the chance here in Congress to ease the immense burden being carried by Micaiah and the tens of millions more seeing a spike in healthcare premiums. I do urge my colleagues in the Senate to do right by families and act without delay to lower healthcare and help working family people breathe a little easier. And make no mistake, the fight to lower costs is far from over. We've got to put our foot on the gas when it comes to driving down those healthcare costs and making life much more affordable for the American people. And with that, I thank our co-hosts for yielding, and I yield back to Representative Rivas. Thank you.
I now yield 3 minutes to my colleague from the great state of California, Congressman John Garamendi.
Well, indeed, it is a great state because we have great freshman representatives. Thank you so very much for this special order hour and the opportunity to really talk about a critical issue for our constituents in California and really all across America. If we go back to the beginning of the Trump administration and we think about the various issues that he has put forth and the burdens that he's placed on America, one of the most important is in the big ugly bill. If you take a look at the big ugly bill and you get into the detail, well, there is the enhanced tax credits for the Affordable Care Act, and we'll talk about that in a few moments. But also in the big ugly bill is the big problem coming up at the end of this 2026 year. They have put in place a dismantling of the Medicaid program. They pushed it off until after the election, but the facts of the matter are those impacts are already being recognized across the healthcare system. It's going to affect every American, and particularly those that are relying on Medicare. Now, if we talk about what the issue is today, and thank goodness, the House of Representatives, the leadership in this House, the Democratic leadership in this House put forth an opportunity to solve one of the most critical problems that face Americans right now, and that is the expiration of the Affordable Care Act tax credits. That's happened. And today on this floor, there was a vote. And fortunately, the House of Representatives, led by the Democrats and a handful of Republicans, pushed forward a 3-year extension of the Affordable Care Act subsidies, which will be exceedingly important. The Affordable Care Act enhanced premium credits expired. They expired last year at the end of the year, and 4 million Americans immediately faced the problem. The expiration of these tax credits not only raised the cost for individuals in the marketplace, it also raised the healthcare cost all across America because it rippled down into all aspects of the health care system, the insurance, and the operations of hospitals and clinics. These harmful impacts won't stop at the Affordable Care Act insurance premiums. Those costs are now across the system. Let me level with the American people. The Republican health care crisis has made you, Americans, having to wait longer for health care. It has made you, Americans, pay more for worst healthcare systems and for you Americans, your clinic, your hospital in rural areas as well as urban areas has shut down. Why? Because the Republicans have been after a challenge dating back to the 1960s when the Medicare program was put in place to eliminate the government's operations there.
I appreciate the $2, Mason Dad Johnson. I appreciate it.
But there's still time to avoid this crisis. And today, this House, led by the Democrats, took action to solve at least one of the major pieces of that, the Affordable Care Act enhanced premium tax credits. It's up to the Senate Republicans now. Hello, where are you, Senate Republicans? Are you paying attention? It's in your House. You have the opportunity to save this system, Senate Republicans. I know that Senate Democrats are already on board. They want to do this. Let's get this done. So let's challenge the Senate Republicans, see where they stand. We know where a whole lot of our Republican colleagues in the House of Representatives stands. They did not stand with Americans. They didn't stand with those people in your districts, in my districts, that are going to lose their Affordable Care Act insurance premiums. We've got work to do. This isn't the end of this crisis of healthcare. This is just one more step along the way to try to find some way to overcome the terrible burden that the Trump administration and the Republicans have placed on Americans as they go about trying to provide healthcare coverage for themselves, for their families, and for their communities. We met that challenge today. The Democrats here in the House of Representatives met that challenge today, and we forced through a 3-year extension of the Affordable Care Act insurance premium subsidies. And we're thankful that many and a handful of Republicans stood with us in this. I yield back.
Thank you. I now yield 3 minutes to my colleague and friend from the great state of California, Veterans Affairs Ranking Member, Congressman Mark Takano.
Okay, so thank goodness they got through to that. So now it's on the Republican side. So now we have to see if the Republicans actually want to help the American people. Now we have to see if they really want to help the American people. I wish both sides are open to the single payer or the universal. That is the thing that needs to be pushed. It's a single payer, one person, and then we all could enjoy healthcare. Everybody can enjoy healthcare. You already pay for healthcare out of your check. You already pay for other people. So please don't say, well, I don't want to pay for other people. We already do that. We already pay for other people. We already spend our money trying to go to, take care of, these extra fees and this extra. When we get to the doctor, we got to pay the extra money. We got to pay a copay, and we got to do all this other extra shit. With single payer, you probably wouldn't have to do all of that. That's the whole point of the single payer. We probably wouldn't have to do all that. Our money would just go directly to that payment, and it would come out of our taxes. In most countries who have single payer or who have universal, their taxes are no more, maybe 1 or 2 notches above ours. Tax-wise, percentages above ours, maybe 2 or 3 percentage points above ours that they pay. We can afford to pay 2 or 3 more percent to get universal health care and free college. We just can.
I thank my California colleague for yielding me the time. Thank you, Congresswoman Rivas, for co-hosting, and I thank Emily Randall of Washington for also co-hosting this important Congressional Progressive Caucus Special Order Hour. Now, we are here because this heretofore do-nothing Republican Congress has let 22 million Americans get priced out of their health care. I learned of a coffee house owner in Riverside, a good friend of mine, whose health insurance went from $600 a month to $1,100 a month. We are here because my Republican colleagues think our national budget is too tight to ensure that our seniors and families can afford health care, but it's flush enough with enough cash to fund escapades in Venezuela and billions of new spending on ICE, and give billionaires permanent
and
tax cuts. We're here because Democrats.
And they're talking about giving the Greenland people, the people who live in Greenland, giving those people money to go along with us taking over Greenland. They're talking about giving them $10 to $100,000 a piece, each person, if they go along with us buying or getting Greenland.
Are the ones that are keeping healthcare front and center for this body. Republicans wish we would stop talking about this, that we would stop bringing it up, but we will not stop because healthcare is vital. It's essential to every American. It was the Democrats that forced this do-nothing Congress to actually act. Speaker Johnson, neither Speaker Johnson or President Trump wanted to make healthcare more affordable. So we took it upon ourselves to pass a 3-year extension of these vital tax credits. 3 years that match with the remaining 3 years of this presidency. 17 Republicans joined us to actually lower costs and to make health insurance affordable. Now, I'm sure the president will have in his mind that he should target for retribution these 17 Republicans for defying him, for defying the orthodoxy of the Republican leadership. He can choose to lead with fear, to be more concerned about Venezuelan oil, or how many more people he can deport, or how much more he can enrich himself. Or he can use his considerable influence and power over Republicans, over Senate Republicans. We saw the reach of his power today as Republicans unanimously voted for water projects for poor people in Colorado and for a Native American tribe in Florida, reversed themselves and sustained his veto. They voted for these two measures before. That is how immense his influence is. The question is, will he get 7 Republicans to do something right for the American people and lower healthcare costs? And will he use his influence to help Americans lower costs, healthcare costs for all Americans, or will he act in retribution? He can lower healthcare costs for all by expanding the pool of insured. The fight is not over. We still have to get through the Senate, but the key to all this is President Trump. Will he demand that the Senate pass a 3-year extension of this bill, 3-year extension of healthcare tax credits? That's the big question. I yield back, my friend.
Thank you. I now yield 3 minutes to my colleague and friend from the great state of Arizona, Congresswoman Adelita Grijalva.
Thank you, Representative Rivas and Representative Randall, for leading on this very urgent healthcare issue. Millions of Americans who depend on the Affordable Health Care Act are selecting their plans right now. And what they are seeing are healthcare options that they cannot afford due to Republicans' refusal to extend premium assistance. So I'm here today speaking on behalf of my constituents in Southern Arizona and those throughout the nation. I'm here for the parents that are going through their monthly budget, trying to figure out what they can give up just to be able to pay for these premiums. And I'm speaking for those who have the horrible feeling in the pit of their stomachs because they know the risk of being uninsured, being one hospital visit away from bankruptcy. My Republican colleagues, and certainly Donald Trump, might understand this, but health insurance is not a luxury. It is a necessity. The facts are clear. Republicans paid for their $1 trillion tax giveaway for the wealthy by cutting healthcare, plain and simple. Over 10 million people will lose their Medicaid, and now millions more could lose their health coverage because they can't afford their premiums. 22 million people, including 400,000 Arizonans with marketplace coverage, are already seeing their healthcare premiums skyrocket. These cuts mean the closure of rural hospitals in Arizona, job losses in our healthcare sector, higher healthcare costs for those with private insurance, and the overall stress to an already stretched thin healthcare system. The state of Arizona has estimated the impact of Medicaid cuts alone to be $34 billion over the next 10 years. For every $1 billion tax cut, there is an estimated loss of 36,000 jobs across multiple industries. And while the economic impacts will be devastating throughout the state, the most immediate impact will be on those going without needed health care. Already a community health care center in my district is feeling the impact of the health care cuts. In 2025, they saw significant cuts in their Ryan White Part B funding. Due to these cuts, some positions had to be eliminated and workflows realigned, including the loss of a medical case management and treatment adherence support. The impacts are real. For instance, a 29-year-old woman diagnosed with HIV during her pregnancy. She's a mom of 2 young kids, 7 and 1 years old. She has struggled with mental illness, depression, and cognitive delay. Because she lacks daily adherence support and for her life-saving valley fever medication, she has been hospitalized 3 times due to sepsis related to the condition. Another 18-year-old with HIV who works as a landscaper has not been able to get back on his medication due to the loss of insurance. His employer does not provide insurance and he makes too much money to qualify for Medicaid. So now the health center team is trying to get support from pharmaceutical companies for this individual. These are the types of stories of real people that simply want to live their lives. Illness and disease does not discriminate. Neither should Congress. Enough of cutting programs that Americans need for basic survival. Enough of the attempts to repeal the Affordable Care Act. Enough of Republicans skyrocketing costs. It's up to Donald Trump and the Republican Party to decide if they will join Democrats to restore these tax credits or whether they will keep making life unaffordable for hardworking Americans. I urge the Senate to act immediately and take up the premium extension bill passed by the House. And I yield back to Representative Rivas. Gracias.
Thank you. I now yield 3 minutes to my colleague and friend from the great state of Oregon, Congresswoman Val Hoyle.
They're just making speeches. People just making speeches. It ain't no big deal. They still making speeches. They've passed everything they need to pass. We got the Affordable Care, or they got the Affordable Care Act through the House. We just got to wait for the Senate. It is what it is out here. And I hate the fact that we got to fight over the ACA or X, Y, and Z. But we got to fight over it for some god-awful reason. They want us to fight over this garbage. I don't understand. But it is what it is, and they're voting. They got to vote. We got to do what we got to do.
As a result of Republican negligence. That means parents are skipping doctor's appointments for their babies, seniors are reconsidering prescriptions, and families are facing the very real possibility of going uninsured. Take Cricket, for example, a constituent in my district. At 63, Cricket is self-employed and not yet eligible for Medicare. She has relied on ACA coverage for 8 years, paying $350 a month. Last year, she suffered a head injury that required emergency care, and ACA kept her bill around $1,000 instead of $10,000, saving her from potential bankruptcy. She fears rising premiums. The ACA is her lifeline, and without it, she could lose her home and everything else that she has built. Today, the House of Representatives finally voted to extend these enhanced premium tax credits for 3 years. And despite 17 Republicans standing up to Donald Trump and to their own leadership, I want to point out that not a single Republican from Arizona's delegation chose to put their constituents first and extend these life-saving subsidies. That is egregious and that is unacceptable. There is still so much more work to do even after today's passage in the House. We must apply pressure to the United States Senate to pass a clean 3-year extension of these ACA tax credits, and Arizonans cannot afford any more delays. Let's be clear, extending these tax credits is necessary, but it's certainly not enough. We need to pass Medicare for all. We are the richest country in the world, and we pay more for healthcare per person than any other developed nation. On average, we spend at least double per person what countries like the United Kingdom, Canada, Australia, and Japan spend on healthcare. So we should be the healthiest, right? We are not. We are 48th in the world for life expectancy. And do you know what most of the countries doing better and paying less than us have in common? They have universal health care. And Americans' physical and financial health depend on us doing the same. So it's time to take real action to bring down healthcare costs for Arizonans and for people all across the United States. That means Medicare for all before more Americans lose their healthcare or go in medical debt. Thank you, and I yield back to Rep. Rivas.
Okay, this is all we need to see. That's all they're doing is grandstanding. Hopefully we can get a pass in the Senate. Hopefully Thune gets them to vote on it. I don't know how soon they're gonna vote on it. I don't know how soon, when, or why, but we hope it's soon enough so the people won't suffer. But the thing is, they want us to suffer. I don't understand what's going on. Why do we have to suffer for no good reason when we can just get health care? We can just get health care and be done with it. Why? Because there was nothing to fix in Obamacare. The Republicans kept tinkering around the edges and they broke Obamacare. They broke Obamacare. They kept tinkering around the edges of Obamacare and the Republicans broke Obamacare. Just wild. Just don't be reading that. No, don't be reading. Just be talking. Y'all just be reading. Don't even be talking. Okay? The minute they took the mandate away from ACA is when it started to destroy itself and the premium started to rise. Know your history, Bud Russell. Y'all hit the like, share, and subscribe. We do this content every day. I might be back, depending on any other kind of decisions that they might be having out there. I'll be back. That Kristi Noem is a liar. Y'all do know that. They're trying to spin this narrative that this woman deserved to get killed. The woman didn't deserve to get killed. The woman didn't deserve to get shot in the face. I don't care how you did it, how you slice it. His level of scared or whatever, his level of violence was too high for what she did. And I likened it to the young man who got killed under the tent at that school event that young man who got killed under the tent by that other young man who stabbed him in the chest. People kept saying he felt threatened. Okay, he felt threatened, but did it rise to the level of him pulling a knife out? No, it did not. Same thing with this ICE person. Did he feel threatened? I don't know. Maybe he did. But did it rise to the level where you were supposed to shoot somebody in the face? No, it did not. So therefore, you should be behind bars awaiting a trial. And it doesn't matter whether she was trying to run you over or not. She didn't run you over. She didn't run you over. Okay? That's the whole point. And then we have to look at that carefully. Now, the administration is trying to spin it. Okay? The administration is trying to spin it like she tried to run him over. It doesn't matter whether she was or not. She wasn't trying to run him over at that particular time. And it didn't rise to the level of a fatal shooting in the face. That's the whole point. Doesn't matter what they were doing at the time. Doesn't matter that the young boy under the tent was pushing the other little boy, telling them to get out from under the tent. You don't belong here. Get out of here. And all of them was standing up in front of him, X, Y, and Z. It don't matter how it was. He pulled out a knife, and it was too high of a level for the threat. Just like that, pulling the gun out and shooting a woman, that was too high of a level for the threat. She wasn't that much of a threat, and you didn't need to pull a gun out. That's the whole point. And even if she deserved a gun, even if she was doing anything crazy or untoward, it still didn't rise to the level of getting shot in the face. And yeah, he probably planned it. I believe that this administration has given these people immunity. They're telling them they can do whatever they want to do, however you want to do it. If you shoot somebody, oh well, we will cover it up. We will try to make it seem as though it was okay. This is exactly what they're going to do. This is how they're going to cover it up. This is how they're going to make that girl's death be a lie. And it's up to the American people not to let it be a lie. They're going to let her death be a lie. And the American people, goofy's going to go right along with it. Oh, well, she deserved. She was there. She tried to run him over. It doesn't matter whether she did or not. The level of threat was not there for him to pull that much force out. Yes, there's levels of how much force. And that was not right. That did not rise to the level of him pulling a gun out. Okay. That did not rise to the level of him pulling a gun out. Her in a car. And he knew it. She was, and the thing was, we can see and everybody can see she's turned away from him, going in the other direction, and he still shoots. And she still shoots. And he still shoots her. Which says their story is bullshit. And they're trying to snow it. And only goofies are going to believe the story. We already seen her with our eyes. We saw her going different way than running him over. He was never run over. That's correct. He just simply murdered the woman. He just simply murdered the woman. And I believe, like I said, I believe this president has given these people immunity to do these things. I'm going to give you an immunity to do it. And when you do it, because he was too cocky and he was too confident, walking around without the thing on his face. He didn't care whether people saw him or not. He didn't care whether somebody saw him or not. Okay. But the point is, Bud Russell, this one wasn't. And the point is, Bud Russell, she was going the other way. She wasn't trying to drag him and she wasn't trying to run him over. Okay. So that's crazy. Slip over. You wrong for that, Nick Rose. You wrong. So I will be back. I will be back. Please hit the like, share, and subscribe button. I appreciate it. I appreciate all of y'all. Y'all know I do. I'll be back. You know something is gonna kick off tonight. I will be back. How does that relate? What? Luke Skywalker, are you saying because she was following them, she deserved to get shot in the face? She was following them, so she deserved to get shot in the face? No, that the level of threat was not there. You know something else is gonna happen. I'll be back. You know something else will be happening.